Welcome again. This is Brother G coming to you again with another video message, another video teaching. What heaven did Paul get caught up in? I mean, this is one of the superficial pillars that the church, at least the one that I grew up in, and many other churches because I go around and visit them, grew up in. This is one of the pillars that they build their beliefs upon, that Paul actually was caught up in the stars, in the galaxy. Just like certain physician of our time, great learned physician, they are caught up in the stars, in the black hole. And it always bewildered me. Yes, that's the word, bewildered me, how they knew about these things, until I had to conclude that God gave them over to their own thoughts, their own mind, their own concept, and they create all this type of elusive belief. We believe that too, because Paul here said, and we're going to read it and we're going to get into it. He's caught up into the third heavens. And we're going to read the text. But as one famous a famous prophet of our time, he's now dead, he said, any text without a context is a pretext. However, many of us do it. We take a verse and it becomes a pretext and we turn it into anything. Well, I cannot change that. Now, what I'm going to reveal to you today, if you listen to this message, I am out here into the wilderness preaching to the ear. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. What heaven did Paul get caught up in? Yes, again, let me repeat. I have seen the Seventh-day Adventists and I've heard them with my ears. I've seen the Church of God. I see the Pentecostal. I see the Church of the Firstborn. Many of them, this is the pillar. Even maybe the Catholic Church to some degree. I never been into their teaching, but the Protestant, I've heard them. They believe this. This is one of the pillars of what they believe, that Paul was actually caught up into the Milky Ways, into the stars, into where the moon and the galaxy, and they have gone light years away into the galaxy, and he was caught up into the heavens, and he saw God on the throne, sitting on the throne, way up in the heavens. Wow. This is what we believe, and it's in the New Testament. And we believe that this is one of the pillars of the church, that Paul was caught up into the Milky Way in the galaxy, and he saw words. As they would say in America, maybe we would say it in Jamaica too, this is hogwash. I'm being so plain. This is hogwash. You see, the problem is we are not asking specific question. We're not seeking. We're not asking. And that is why, basically, as the thought would say, or my belief is, we are in a quandary. We are perplexed. Where's the understanding? How can we sort these things out? Because these are deeply held beliefs. These are pillars of the church. But they are lies. They are just plain lies. Now, what possibly then is the third heaven Paul got caught up in, if there is even such a thing? But I'm going to show you from the context that Paul could merely be, as they would say, it's a derogatory term. Everyone was measuring it's a derogatory term, but that's the term that comes to me. Everyone was measuring their their sexual prowess to see who was better than who. Here's the text. I knew a man in Christ about 14 years ago. That means more than 14 years. He's not sure if it is 14. That's what it means. Whether in the body, I cannot tell, or whether out of the body, meaning spiritually. I cannot tell. He said God knows. Such a one was caught up to the third heaven. Now, again, if you read this text by itself, according to what they given to us or forced upon us, if you read this text by itself, you will come up with all kind of conjecture, as the word would say, or assumption, all kind of things. You said Paul was caught up in the third heaven. We went through this in our teaching back in my days in the church. We went through it and we started to say, and I was a part of it too. We were saying, I wonder what was the second heaven? What was the first heaven? Because he could classify it as the third heaven, meaning there was a first, or implicitly or tacitly, there was a first heaven, there was a second heaven. And we were caught up in this debate of where was the first heaven? Where was the second heaven? And we never, not to my knowledge, concluded what was the first and the second, or could we place the third very clearly in our understand. It was just an ongoing debate of the third heaven, and we want to be caught up in the third heaven. We want to be raptured and all these things, bro. We're certainly in a quandary. But the problem is, even if we're in a quandary, even right now, even before COVID, even though we're in a quandary, here's the problem. We are not aware that we are in a quandary, even when we are debating something that is actually quandreous. I'm just making up words. Anyways, so this belief is a pillar of the churches, that Paul was caught up in the third heaven and he went to space and he went to the Milky Ways and he was able to see God and he heard unspeakable words. Let's keep on reading. Keep on reading. So he went on to say how that he was caught up into paradise. Now, obviously, he's confirming heaven and paradise as one. So paradise in our meaning, modern meaning today, paradise meaning great. It's an oasis of goodness, all the things that is needed. And he heard unspeakable words, which is not lawful for a man to utter. How did he know it was not lawful, which was unlawful for man to utter? How did he know this? All of this thing is perplexing. Yes, it is. It's like, what is this? I'm like, yo, whatever, man. So the word here, paradise, if I'm looking at the whole Bible and using the Bible for its own meaning, this word paradise could simply mean the land of milk and honey, or the land of plenty, whatever it means. This paradise just simply mean, which in reality, if you read by the Old Testament, paradise really mean a land that is more fruitful than yours if you're coming out of your land. For example, it's obvious to me that coming from Jamaica and coming to the United States is much more prosperous in terms of opportunity than Jamaica. Even if you went to England, as it's obvious, England or France are some of those, as they call it, first world country in terms of plentiful. That is what paradise, I believe, means right here. It's not paradise as in oasis. We have to come out of the stars and come back to earth. So what I want to show here is that this conversation, according to this letter to the Corinthians, is part of a debate that Paul and the elders of the Corinthian church was trying to show whose sexual prowess was bigger or greater in authority and power. So Paul was now calling upon that he went to the third heavens, and we're going to see what he likely meant. I'm not in the stars. I'm squarely upon the earth. Basically, we want a bridge of understanding here, because we are really we are really on the land of the straits, and not just straits of problem, but perplexity. So really here, we're going to move into something here. Really here, many of us has taken out the verse and turn it in our pretext and turn it, say Paul went to the Milky Ways. And truth be told, Paul do talk like he was in the Milky Way, because in the Corinthians, he's trying to show his sexual prowess with the elders of the Corinthians by talking about celestial bodies and all these things. And we who are ignorant take these things as he was literally in the heavens, as the heavens, like Zeus and Pleiades and all these things, and Orion and all these things. We who were ignorant thought that they are in the heavens, but the question never dawned on us to say, how the hell they got into heaven? How did God take them away to heaven, and we can't be literally taken away to heaven? Basically, these guys was talking about figurative language, and it has turned into hogwash, really. So that's why we are perplexed. So we need a bridge of understanding. We need to come across the bridge and understand, say, these guys, even the letter to the Corinthians was really a show of sexual prowess. One of the things that I have now learned that men do when they are positing, see me I use their word, come and learn from them. When they are positing their argument and they want it to be believable, or they want their argument to have standing, they want their argument to have ground. For example, and I'm going to show you in the New Testament, that's actually what they do in the book of Hebrews. We're going to read the text and show you that literally this is what men do. Even children do it, whether they know it or not. All of us call upon something greater than us, or a person that is greater than us, to convince the people that we are arguing that our belief had standing, because these people believe it. For example, in the church of today, Protestant church, especially those Protestant, when they talk, they always refer to Calvin, or they would refer to Augustine. Augustine? I think it's Augustine, something like that. They refer to these men. Martin Luther, they refer to these, not Martin Luther Jr. King, they refer to these men to show that these men were stalwart in their generation. So they are great among the people. So this idea that I'm putting forward right now is believable because they believe it too. Look what the book of Hebrews say. For when God made a promise to Abram, because he couldn't swear by no greater, he swore by himself. So the belief here, according to the writer of Hebrew, is that God, which is, they're not talking about the men God, or the mankind God, or the sons of God. He's talking about the God, the real God, the God, right? Not the Zeus God, the God. He's saying God swear by himself because there was no greater than him. So he swear by himself, meaning he swear by his mouth. In reality, there are men who swear by themselves just like God here. There are men who are so powerful, are so arrogant, are ignorant, are powerful within themselves, that swear by themselves. They swear because they don't see anybody greater than themselves. That's the message here. That's the understanding. So what I'm saying is, the context of what Paul is saying is actually swearing by something that is greater than himself, or positioning an argument that he was caught up into the third heaven. This is not just me saying it. We're going to read a little bit of it and see that this is the context. Come back to earth, people. We are earthly. We are men. Hear what the Hebrews 6 say. For men verily truly swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is to them an end of all strife. So like me now, if I want to end this debate, well, I'm on YouTube, and if I'm talking to regular people and I want to end this debate, I would call upon God. I really amorphous, is that a word too? Sometimes I forget it. I got to keep on using these words to get acquainted with them. It is not clear, but once you call upon God, whichever God it is, it's the purpose of it is to end all strife, to say that, listen, God believed this. But the question always come to me, I'm answer, how did you know that God required this? But no, I understand when God acquired something. I do. And it's much more easier than this thing that we are doing. So basically what the Corinthians, or the letter to the Corinthian, was doing, and I'm putting these verses here to say that this is what men have always done. They call upon that which is greater than them. All right, let's use another modern example. Like if I'm talking about, let's use a modern example, and what I'm trying to show here plainly, and we're going to go to some of the context of Corinthians as he was debating the elders, because they didn't see him as anybody great. They didn't see him as had the sexual prowess, the sexual seed to impregnate their church with truth or his ideas, and they were conversing to see who had the better sexual prowess. So this is the context of Corinthians. So he were calling upon the third heavens, but we're gonna see what he actually meant. So the example in modern time is, because I am of a man with no reputation, I not have nothing big. If I put forth my argument, which I don't do really. I don't do. When I put forth my arguments, I don't call upon, like, say, I use this name because it's out there, Warren Buffett, if I'm talking about economy or economic stuff. I don't call on him, which many people do. Listen to them. They would say, Warren Buffett believed this. They won't say it like this, but they will say it in some roundabout way or whatever. They would say, Warren Buffett believed this. In other words, what they are saying is, if Warren Buffett believed this, he's greater than me, and he believes also what I believe. So it's to end all argument or all strife. For another example, if you're trying to build a business today, people would look at Amazon, quote unquote, model of being one of the greatest merchant of our time. They would quote the Amazon CEO and say, look, this is their practice, as if because they are the greatest, one of the greatest in merchanthood today, that mean that their practice are the right practice. But when they call upon them, when they are talking about economic or business practices and stuff, they would call upon the CEO of Amazon or call upon Amazon in the sense that Amazon is greater than them. And if they're using this business model, that means it's good. And if they are profitable, that means it's good. But that's not true. We all know, anybody with any type of wisdom know that that's not true. They're the one at the top at this moment. So basically the idea is to bring back the context of Corinthians. That's exactly what Paul was doing, to show that he was just as good as those elders in the Corinthians. If you look at it contextually, not pretextually, but contextually, they were measuring their sexual prowess according to the text, the Corinthian text. What was given to us are forced upon us. Now, let us look at the context of how Paul talk about the third heaven, and then we're going to get into what he could have meant by the third heaven. Are they Hebrews? This is chapter 11 now, coming up to chapter 12 of Corinthians, the letter to the not to the women, the letter to the elders them. Are they Hebrews? He was actually talking about the elders, obviously, or implicitly or tacitly. They were saying Paul wasn't a Hebrew. Our Paul wasn't this, our Paul wasn't that. So he's responding to them through the letter. So we are understand them thing, We were ignorant once, but we're not ignorant all the time, Even though we speak like how we speak. We're not ignorant. Johnny come lately. So Paul has said to them, are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelite? He must say we are Israelite. He might Israelite too. So I am. Are they the seed of Abraham? Him says, so I am. Are they minister of Christ? I speak as a fool. So he must say, if them a minister of Christ, he more than they. Look at the context of what he's saying. Me more than them. Me are more speakers of Christ than uno. I speak as a fool. I am more in labors, and then he go off into all his qualification to be a leader or his qualification to talk to the Corinthians. So basically, let me slow down. So basically, what Paul is here is doing is laying out his qualification to the leaders who are saying Paul is an idiot. Paul don't know what he's talking about the resurrection of the dead, while the Pharisees believe that. So basically, even today, we have to qualify ourselves before even our family members. We have to qualify ourselves before institution. We have to qualify. We have to go to school. We have to get certificate. We have to get bachelors of science, bachelors of doctors and masters and degrees. I understand the thing now. So basically, Paul was laying out his qualifications. So he was trying to show his sexual prowess in how he can be a leader and he can inject his idea, and his ideas are potent just like them. But they were obviously blocking him. As they would, I'm not going to use that term. But that's basically the term here. So when he talks of the third heaven, you can't take it as literally that he went out into space. He went out into the celestial, the terrestrial beings of space, or whatever you want, the sun and the moon, and he saw gods in the heavens, and he saw Zeus sitting at the right hand. They are talking figurative language, high, confusing, convoluted, figurative language, which they knew what they meant at the time. Sorry to say, we don't know, because we believe that they went outer space to meet God and come back to earth, and all these kind of weird fairy tale. They're not even fairy tale, mythological myth kind of thing. This is basically they're talking high, convoluted, lawyer language, and Paul was a part of that too. He was talking just like them. So basically, this was the context of the letter. This is the context of the letter. He was showing from the beginning of the letter all the way to the first and second Corinthians. He was showing his qualification. Even today, if someone would come on my video and listen to it, first, when they hear me speaking like this, they want to know my qualification to speak like this. Don't you know? So that's the idea. That's the general idea of the world. Whether they admit it or not, people want to know your qualification. What qualifies you to speak? And if they think you don't have qualification to speak, they disregard what you're saying, whether it is truth or lies. That's not the idea, but that's not the idea whether it's truth or lie. The idea is they're looking for qualification. How are you qualified to speak? Now, today in the churches, even in my churches, it came into our church, which wasn't there before. The qualification is, without saying it, which is tacit, you have to go to seminary to be qualified to be a leader, which is not true. So was Paul caught up in the third heaven as we believe, and which is a pillar in many churches, Baptist, Protestant, Methodist? Did Paul get caught up in the galaxy, in the Milky Way, beyond the stars, in the throne of God, in the heavens of the heaven? Did Paul get caught up into the third heaven as we believe, as we mythologically believe. I gotta practice how to pronounce those words. Did Paul get caught up in the celestial heavens where he saw God sitting on a throne in heaven and he saw? That's the question. And I'm showing you, come back to earth, people. We have been in the stars for too long. There is even, no, let me not take a shot. All right, let's keep it. Let's keep it in our Christian realm. Keep it, talking to myself. So we're creating a bridge to life, or a bridge to understanding, and a bridge to wisdom. And those who hear this, yes, see, that's the first thing's going to be swirling, or one of the first things that's going to be swirling around in your thought to ask me, but you're not asking. What is my qualification to speak such like this? And it was asked of me in a roundabout word way as being controversial. Now, if you look at the text, we're going to plainly show what he possibly mean by he was caught up into the third heaven. And our meaning is more clear, more precise, more succinct, and can give more people a greater understanding than the current or the past belief that he was caught up in the stars, in the moon and the stars and the clouds. Our belief, according to the context, what was forced upon us, what was given to us, we're going to clearly show you what Paul meant, past tense. Anyways, we didn't practice English language as they teach us, but we know what we are saying. Let's go to Acts and read what Acts said. Then Fetus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, Hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar shalt thou go. This, my friends, this, my challengers, this is what Paul possibly meant, or he was tacitly, or he was using it as a means to show that his argument was sexual prowess was just as great as the Corinthian leaders, are even greater. That's what he was saying, really. My qualification, I am greater. How can this, your question is, how is this reveal that he was caught up in the third heaven? Well, I'm not looking at the third heaven because that's just convoluted and crazy. The devil is a liar. I'm showing you what they meant by heaven. And this is the highest form of government at Paul's time. And more than any of the leaders in Corinthians, Paul appeared, or it never clearly told us, even when you read the book of Acts or the book of Romans, it didn't clearly tell us or give us an audience as someone looking into the letter that Paul stood before Caesar. There is no evidence in the New Testament, the one that we have, that was forced upon us and given to us, that Paul actually stood before Caesar. He stood before Fetus. He stood before Felix. He stood before Agrippa. He stood before them, but there is no letter. Maybe the Nicene Creed took that letter out, but there was no letter or evidence that Paul stood before Caesar, which is actually what they talk about, the heavens, because these were high places of authority, high places of government, and Caesar at the time, Rome or whatever, was the superpower. Yes, there is no evidence, according to the New Testament, that Paul actually stood before Caesar. It is assumed or a conjecture by those in the seminary councils of the Nicaea and what was passed down to them. So what was the third heaven according to the context of the New Testament, according to the letter, according to what was forced upon us or what was given to us? What was the third heaven? Please throw away what is third, because that's going to become convoluted and confusing, because you're going to say the third heaven. It's so confusing and it could mean anything. But basically what he meant by heaven It's basically he stood before kings, he stood before queens, which was Agrippa, he stood before governors, he stood before, assumingly, presumably, he stood before Caesar, who was the highest authority in their time, the greatest superpower at their time. And Paul, his qualification was that he stood before all of these people to profess the gospel of the kingdom, and none of these elders was able to do what he did. So therefore, he was positing a argument or a qualification or a sexual prowess that, listen, I am greater. They beat me. I stood before kings, and this is the third heaven. This is basically he stood before Caesar, presumably, because it's not clear in the New Testament. This is the third heaven that they were speaking of. This is what he is saying. He, whether in the body or the spirit, he went to the third heavens. This is what, even if I would say possibly, my meaning, my word, my idea, and my understanding is much more grounded in reality than what we have learned for these many years, for what we have learned from seminary, from what we have learned from people in high places, that Paul went out into the celestial galaxy and saw God. That's mythology. That's myth. That's old wives' fable. Come back to earth. Paul basically say he stand before kings.